Hey there, Jake here from CVP. Today we are taking a look at an exciting new zoom lens from Sigma, the 28 to 105mm f2.8 DG-DN Art. Ever since Canon announced their 24 to 105mm f2.8 last year, Sony users have been hoping that Sony or a third-party lens manufacturer like Sigma would create a lens like that for E-mount systems, and it looks like Sigma have answered the calls. Sigma lent us an E-mount version of the lens for a few days to create this video, and this lined up very nicely with us heading down to Portsmouth to capture some of Victoria's festival. We paired the 28-105 with our trusty FX6, which it works with really well, though if the camera or lens had some form of stabilisation, they would have paired even better. In classic British fashion, we got caught in a massive downpour while shooting where the lens got incredibly wet before we managed to get our wet covers out and onto our cameras. Fortunately, the 28-105 is dust and splash resistant, so thankfully once the rain subsided and we got the cameras out from under their covers and gave them a good wipe down, they were good to go and continue shooting. The images we managed to capture throughout the day range in focal length, but the majority was shot at around f2.8 to 5.6, paired with the FX6's excellent auto ND. And these images look great. The results look incredibly clean, and a 28 to 105mm f2.8 is such a great range and maximum aperture for a run and gun situation like shooting a festival. The 28-105 is a pretty compact lens when at the wide end, especially compared to the Canon 24 to 105 f2.8, but that lens doesn't trombone, which the 28-105 does, and at 105mm it's pretty much the same length as the Canon lens. The fact it's smaller at the wide end does make it better to travel with though, as it can pack down pretty compactly. However, the Canon also has optical stabilisation, which is something I would have loved to have seen in the 28-105 as well, especially when using it with a non-stabilised sensor like the one found in the FX6. The 28-105 feels very robust in the hand. It has a nice matte finish, houses 18 elements in 13 groups inside, and weighs roughly 990 grams for the E-mount version we have with us here, and a little bit more for the L-mount version. That's not too bad considering its focal range, aperture, and overall optical quality. It paired on larger video cameras like the FX6 works really well. On smaller cameras though, it can be a bit front heavy on the long end, but that's not too surprising. But overall, it handles well. It has an 82mm filter thread, a nice declickable aperture ring, a lock button for the zoom, which is good for storing the lens, and 2 AF lock buttons. While we had the lens, we did spend most of our time shooting using autofocus, but we did manual focus at some points. The 28-105 features Sigma's newest focus motors, and is unsurprisingly focused by wire. However, manual focusing is genuinely nice. It has a good amount of resistance to the focus ring. However, this lens, like some of Sigma's previous new lenses, will perform differently between E and L mount cameras. On E mount cameras currently, manual focusing is non-linear. This means that the amount of rotation between closed focus and infinity will change depending on the speed you rotate the focus ring. This is not the case when you use the L-mount version of this lens, as in the Panasonic menus you can change how the focus rotation behaves. For Sony video users wanting a more consistent manual focus experience, this won't be as ideal as the linear rotations of Sony's first-party lenses. Hopefully though, this is something that Sony and Sigma can update together in the future. As I said earlier, we spent most of our time shooting with the 28-105 with our FX6 using autofocus. And in the run and gun documentary scenario of shooting a festival that we got it into, it performed really well. Even in the lower light situations, this pairing snapped onto faces and tracked really consistently. I also wanted to see though how well the 28 to 105mm compared to Sony's latest 24 to 70 f2.8 G Master 2. So we shot some very quick test shots back to back at a few different focal lengths. Looking at the rushes, we can't really see too much of a difference in this scenario. They both track SAM well across the wide and tight focal lengths. It's good to see that the Sigma performs well here, as most people are going to be shooting with autofocus with this lens. If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest kit, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to buy anything you see in this video, or want to get your hands on this new lens, or any other kit for that matter, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. If you have watched any of our previous lens reviews, you have often heard the word breathing. Breathing is a term used to describe the slight focal length change that can happen when moving through a lens's focus range. It's a characteristic that is common in stills lenses, as it is something that will not be noticed when shooting a single frame. But with moving image, it can be seen as distracting, so most cine lenses are optically designed to minimize focus breathing. However, like a lot of optical imperfections, this could be a desired effect in some situations. So for these focus breathing examples, we stopped down to f5.6 and shot at 28, 35, 50, 70 and 105mm, putting through the entire focus range, so this may look more exaggerated than real-world focus pulls. Throughout the range, the lens does have some focus breathing present. At 28 to 35mm it looks good, but from 50mm it does become a bit more noticeable. Compared to the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 I think the 28-105 performs slightly better. Unfortunately, you can't use Sony's focus breathing correction mode with this lens. The 28-105 has a consistent close focus of 40cm or 14.8 inches throughout its focal range, which compared to the Canon 24-105 2.8, it's actually a little bit better, though compared to the Sigma 24-70 282, that lens has a much better close focus, especially at the wide end. Anyway, the lens performs well here though with minimal aberration. A parfocal lens is a zoom lens that can maintain its focus while having its focal length changed, and it is an important feature to many video and cinema shooters, but it's less of a concern with stills due to the use of autofocus. So given that the 28-105 is primarily designed for stills, it's unsurprising to see that as we zoom, we can see the focus shifting as we go through the focal range. If you need to achieve a parfocal zoom when shooting video with this lens, it may be worth enabling autofocus when doing so, though the speed you zoom will change how well the camera can track. Let's take a look at the image it produces, starting with our bokeh headshot examples. I'm going to be comparing this lens to the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 DG-DN2 throughout our testing, as I know it's a lens that this new lens is going to be compared to a lot. Let's start off taking a look at the 28-105. It has pretty consistent performance throughout its focal range. Our out of focus highlights have a little bit of texture to them, but no onion skinning, and an overcorrected defined edge with a slight glow. In the corners at 28mm we can see a bit of colour aberration, which is present throughout the f-stop range and focal range, though performance improves from around 50mm onwards. Shape overall is pretty good, but we can see misshapen bokeh towards the corners across the focal range, but this does improve as you stop down to 5.6. At f5.6 we can also really see the 12 blade aperture forming our highlights. Compared to the 24-70, I think they both render our highlights very similarly. The 28-105 may have a touch more saturation to its colour aberration and less glow than the 24-70 does though, but they are very similar overall. Let's take a look at how these lenses perform in regards to transverse aberration. These example clips are with the internal correction profiles turned on, which includes chromatic aberration correction. The 28-105 performs well across its focal range here, with slight pink aberration before and green aberration after our point of focus. This is pretty consistent throughout its range, though the colours do shift slightly, with it becoming more blue and red towards the longer end. Compared to the 24-70 282, the 28-105 does handle aberration far better, especially at the long end where we can see that it's much cleaner with far less pronounced colour aberration. For our chart testing, we paired the lenses with an FX6, and we moved our camera further away from the chart to try and match framing as much as we can between the different focal lengths and lenses. Starting at 28mm, we can see that the 28-105 resolves well in the centre, with minimal CA and good resolving power. Compared to the 24-70 at the same f-stop, we can see that the 24-70 isn't as sharp until f5.6, where it is comparable. In the corners, both lenses fall off, but the 28-105 resolves far better again. This kind of performance is true throughout the range until 70mm, where I would say the 24-70 performs its best and is very close in performance to the 28-105. At 105mm, the 28-105 looks just as good as the rest of its range. So overall, the 28-105 is a well-resolving and clean lens. There isn't much in the way of spherical or chromatic aberration at all. It performs really well, and surprisingly better than Sigma's new 24-70 2.82. For our distortion testing, we shot some stills with an FX3 in its 3x2 mode. I shot these with in-camera corrections on and off, so we can see how the lens behaves with and without them. With corrections off, we can see that the lens has some barrel distortion. This turns to moustache distortion at 35mm, and at 50mm we can see obvious pincushion distortion, which is consistent through to 105mm. With the corrections turned on, we can see that pretty much all of this distortion is gone. So if you don't want this performance, just make sure you have corrections turned on in camera when shooting or when processing your images in post in a program like Lightroom. If you do choose to disable the correction and you are shooting video, you will see less distortion overall if you're shooting in 16 or 17:9 mode compared to 3:2. A lens's flare characteristic is a very subjective thing. For these examples, we've grabbed a torch and blasted down the barrel of the lens. The 28-105 certainly has an interesting flare. Compared to the 24-70-282, which looks much more subtle and conventional, we can see that the 28-105 does look quite a bit busier. Though this could be something someone likes. It of course depends on your taste. We shot most of our creative footage with the 28-105 with the included hood on to help with the changing weather conditions, but did get it to flare a few times, and those clips do look nice. The 28-105 has been designed for full frame cameras, which means it should have an image circle of roughly 43.467mm. We unfortunately can't capture E-mount lenses for our lens tool, however I still conducted our regular coverage tests. This meant I shot tests at 28, 35, 50, 70 and 105mm, at f2.8 and f4, and at close focus and infinity. I shot them with in-camera illumination corrections on and off. We can see that throughout the range coverage is really good. Even with corrections off, we can only see a little bit of light fall off towards the corners of frame. But the lens has no hard vignetting at all, and if you're shooting with corrections on, you will have nice, even illumination across your frame. And if you're shooting video, you will see even less of this in 16 or 17:9. The Sigma 28-105mm f2.8 has been lovely to use while we've had it. It can produce nice, sharp, clean imagery with smooth focus fall off, which for this style of lens is exactly what people will want. 28-105mm is a great focal range, and while yes, 24mm at the wide end would have been nice, given its pretty reasonable £1,399 price tag, I think this 4mm sacrifice for some will be worth the f2.8 aperture and extra 35mm at the long end. I think both the E and L mount versions of this lens are going to be very popular with photographers and videographers alike. Compared to the rest of the options for both E and L mount, it does offer a pretty unique blend of features for its price. And if you're in the market for a lens like this, there are a few things to consider and weigh up between all of the available zoom lenses in this segment. Do you need 24mm at the wide end? Is 105mm long enough at the telly end? Do you need optical stabilization? Do you only use autofocus? And the all-important question, how much money do you want to spend? Which lens is best for you will depend on what you need. So if you want some advice on what lens might be best for you, don't hesitate to get in contact with our experienced team on cvp.com, where we have a massive range of video, cine and photo equipment available to order now. Anyway, if you're interested in picking up one for yourself, I've put links to our website in the description below. If you have any further questions about the lens, let us know in the comments below. And if you like the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.